East odds. We're going to discuss that, win totals, and look, the NFC was, check that, the NFC East a few years ago was kind of the butt of all jokes, but if we're really being honest, they're probably the best division in football in 2022 based on total record. Plus, remember the Philadelphia Eagles, they're from the NFC East. They got to the Super Bowl. They got beat, but the Cowboys, Giants, Commanders, I think they all should be fairly optimistic heading into the season. So where do things stand? I think it's even money for the Eagles to win the NFC East. That's what the odds tell us. Bet 100, you win 100. How often are you going to find a team that made it to the Super Bowl and they actually upgraded their roster during the offseason? Not very often. Howie Roseman's a magician. And you saw what Jalen Carter did in his first exhibition game, men against boys. The Eagles scored the third most points last year, gave up the eighth fewest points. That's not a bad parlay. And they end up bolstering both sides of the football. They trade DeAndre Swift, and they draft Jalen Carter, as well as his fellow teammate Nolan Smith. I don't know, man. I don't know if you can have too many pass rushers, but Philly is going to be getting after the quarterback. Now, they lost a few pieces. They lost Javon Hargrave. They saw their coaching staff plucked, so they're going to have a new offensive and defensive coordinator this year. But they did lock up Jalen Hurts on a big money contract. He's coming off an MVP caliber season. And the Jalen Hurts, I think I would know, will be even better this year. He's got a ton of talent around him. This is a kid who's driven. And this is an organization who's driven. Forget winning the division. I think the Eagles want to get back to the Super Bowl. And I will tell you, in an NFC where it's much more wide open than the AFC, I think Philly could do it. We'll see. Dallas, the odds makers have them plus 175, which means if you bet Dallas to win the NFC East, you bet 100, and you would bring back 175 should Dallas win the division. Remember, there has not been a repeat winner in the NFC East in 15 years. The Cowboys also made a lot of changes in the offseason. There's no more Ezekiel Elliott. They let him walk in free agency. They did sign another receiver in Brandon Cooks, and now Mike McCarthy will go back to calling plays. No more Kellen Moore. He's gone as well. Despite all the changes on offense, it's the defense, I think, that's going to determine Dallas's fate this year. You got Micah Parsons back. He's a defensive player year runner-up. He's put on some weight. He is an incredible pass rusher. They got rookie out of Michigan, Mozzie Smith, who has a potential to be a beast, and former defensive player of the year, Stephon Gilmore. And you put him as a bookend with Trayvon Diggs at the other corner. At worst, Dallas has a top 10 defense. They might, statistically, at the end of the year, end up being the best defense in the league. Here we go, though. I talked about this earlier. There's a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott to perform. He led the league in interceptions last year, in spite of the fact he missed 4 games. And he's becoming more of a mystery to me. It's unclear what his future could be in Dallas. He's got everything you could ask for. He's got a great offensive line, got all the weapons, and this, I think, is absolutely the most important year of Dak Prescott. But he's a turnover machine in high-leverage moments, and his coach, I also don't really trust. And what does Mike McCarthy say? He wants to run the ball more this year? Say what? In this man's NFL, you run to hold the lead, but you got to get the lead first. And to do that, you have to have a dynamic passing offense. This is basketball on turf now. Put your playmakers in space. We'll see what Dallas does. Now, the New York Giants, they were a welcome story last year. They're 6-1 odds to win the NFC East this year, which means if you put $100 up and the Giants end up winning the East, you win $600. Now, they did make the playoffs, but they only finished third in the division last year. They were 9-7-1. Obviously, Daniel Jones had his best professional season. I think you got to give a lot of credit there to Brian Dable. He finished 6th in quarterback rating. However, Daniel Jones only threw 15 touchdowns last year, threw touchdown passes. And he didn't exactly silence his critics, if you get my drift. So what New York has done, they're starting to prioritize the defensive side of the ball. They certainly did that in the draft. They select Deonte Banks, a former corner, and they get a very fast wide receiver in Jalen Hyatt in the 3rd round. So Jones has a bit of a vertical threat this year that they didn't really have last year. Fortunately, Saquon Barkley is back in camp. May not be 100% happy, but he did run for 1,650 yards last year, caught 50 balls, 10 touchdowns. And I think what's happening here in terms of how people, the media, opposing teams, fans, very similar to Dak Prescott, this might be a bit of a prove-it year for Daniel Jones. All right, he got his 4-year deal wrapped up, but he really needs to progress as a passer. This is a quarterback league, in case you haven't noticed. The Giants started fast last year, finished slow. They did win a playoff game on the road. Got to give it up to them. But they need to be consistent, more consistent this year if they have designs on winning the division. That leaves the Washington Commanders. 100-1. If there's anything Washington fans can celebrate, well, there's no longer Daniel Snyder looming over the franchise. And they've got a new ownership group that actually includes Magic Johnson as part of that group. But as far as their on-field play, I would say the Commanders are going to need more than Magic, right? How do you do this? Last year, their offense actually led the league in time of possession, but they finished 24th in scoring. Why? Because they don't have good quarterback play. They had poor quarterback play. That's why they misfired so much last year. You hand the keys to the car to Sam Howell. It's only his second year. Luckily for Howell, I think he's going to benefit working with Eric Bieniemy. And, how can that not be? Given Kansas City's offensive success consistently for the last 5 years, Bieniemy has to deserve some credit. Yeah, you got Patrick Mahomes. I get it. But you got to give Bieniemy some credit. Now, Washington's defense is better. It's solid, but it's also inconsistent. The Commanders are hoping. They got a first-round pick. Their new corner, Emmanuel Forbes. Hopefully he shores up this secondary that was not great last year. But they do have a damn good defensive line that wreaks havoc on opposing quarterbacks. They managed to get to the quarterback with bad intentions. So we'll see what Washington does. I wouldn't write them off. I wouldn't. But they got quite a hill to climb. As far as the win totals, the Eagles over-under is 10.5. And no matter that the NFC East is balanced and strong, I think asking the Eagles to only win 11 games and lose 6, one of the most talented teams in football. Philly went 14-3 last year. They only lost once when Hurts played. The defense might need a few weeks to adapt to their new personnel, but they're going to be elite again. The offense will be very good again. I don't see how Philly does not go over 10.5 wins. One of the reasons I say that, this is a key stat. The Eagles had a point differential of plus 133. That equates to almost 8 points per game last year. That's the third highest in the league. Combine that with that prolific defense that gets after the quarterback, the Eagles will be just fine. I think they win more than 10.5 games. Dallas, their over-under is 9.5. I wouldn't touch this. They have a lot of talent, almost too much talent to have a bad team. But they've been at or barely above 500 in 6 of their last 7 seasons. But yes, they have won double-digit games in 3 of the last 5. However, no team has won back-to-back division titles since the Eagles accomplished that back in 2004. Maybe that gives Dallas hope. I don't know. I'm concerned about Dallas. There are tremendous expectations. They average 31 points a game in their 12 wins, but in their 5 losses, only 17 points a game. Now, one of those losses came when Cooper Rush was under center. Dallas can't touch that. They might be 9-8. I don't trust Mike McCarthy, and I really don't trust Dak Prescott, although that defense will be sick. The New York Giants over-under 7.5 wins. You tell me the Giants can't go 8-9? Yeah, they were one of the most surprising teams in the league last year. And as I said, they even won a playoff game against the Vikings on the road. They lose to the Eagles in the divisional round. The Eagles go on to get to the Super Bowl. But Giants get no respect. But they got enough playmakers on both sides of the ball. They're not a true powerhouse, but I like the culture, and I like the way Brian Dable conducts his business. Key stat here, Giants have not had back-to-back winning seasons with at least 9 wins since 2012. They won 9 both times, but again, you only got to get to 8 wins to get over their total of 7.5. Can they do that? Finally, the Washington Commanders over-under 6.5 wins. You look up the word poor results in the dictionary, that's the Commanders. Their name is right next to it. Still, The Commanders somehow went 8-1 in 2022. If Sam Howell can settle in, if he can be just a little consistent and solidify that position, man, you got Terry McLaurin and Jonathan Allen and Cameron Curl. These are above average players. Here's the key. Washington has started 14 different quarterbacks in the last 5 years, but they've won at least 7 games in 7 of the last 8 seasons. Can Washington go over 6.5 wins? I believe they can. But I also believe Philly will win the division to be the first team to repeat since 2004 when Philly won the division. So there you have it. Next week we will do the AFC East.